Welcome to the Bougie Coop, the podcast for backyard chicken keepers with tight spaces, big dreams, and a flair for the fabulous. I'm your host, Lisa Ronsky, and every episode we'll talk about all the quirky adventures of raising backyard birds with a bougie twist. I'll just say it up front, I'm proudly one of those crazy chicken ladies. When I brought home my first chicks, I had no idea how much they changed my life. These incredible birds have brought me so much joy, connection, and honestly, a whole lot of healing. So whether you're a seasoned hen tender or still daydreaming about your first coop, you're in the right place. This podcast is your comfortable, slightly chaotic guide to small space chicken keeping. So fluff those feathers, pour yourself something sparkly, and let's dive in. The Bougie Coop is proudly sponsored by Eden Feeds. Eden Feeds is a Montana-based company that was started in 2018. The founders were looking for high-quality, non-GMO feed that didn't break the bank. Unable to find what they wanted, they decided to make it themselves. Good stuff in means good stuff out, and Eden Feeds uses only locally sourced, Montana-grown grains in all of their formulas. It's a high-quality product at a great price point. My girls love it, and I know yours will too. Eden Feeds is available in the western U.S. at Murdoch's ranch stores and plenty of smaller local feed shops too. Check out EdenFeeds.com to find a location near you. I also want to give a huge shout out to the coolest t-shirt company out there, Agri-Tees. High-quality t-shirts with sassy, sarcastic, and inside chicken jokes made for people who choose different. These aren't your mother's t-shirts. They're designed to match your slightly skewed personality that sometimes raises eyebrows. They're also not just for chicken people. There's designs for everyone in agriculture. Agri-Tees. See what they did there? And because being bougie means being smart, use promo code STAYBOUGIE for 20% off your order. Check them out at agritees.com. That's AGRITEES.com. Welcome to the Bougie Coop. Today we are tackling Marek's disease. There is a lot of information out there on this virus, and not all of it is good. So today I'm going to walk you through it clearly, thoroughly, and without the unnecessary panic. Let's start, as always, with a little history. Marek's disease is caused by a virus and was first identified in 1907 by Joseph Marek, a Hungarian veterinarian. It specifically targets lymphoid tissue, which is where white blood cells hang out. It sneaks into the cells and hides like you trying to hide those extra chicks you brought home from your significant other. The difference is that Marek's is much better at hiding things than you are. Yep, the virus said, I'll just hide inside the thing designed to destroy me. It's bold, it's rude, and it's highly effective. And to add the cherry on top, it also has the patience of a saint. It's not always in a big rush to get things done, which means a bird can be infected with Marek's and look completely fine until something stresses it out. That's when the virus makes its move. Cold weather, hot weather, parasites, adding new flock members, poor nutrition, anything that weakens immune function can give the virus a reason to party. It is a virus that wants to see the world and all of the world, so it has figured out that the best way to travel is by using the stuff that chickens leave everywhere. No, not poop. Marek's is a little more bougie than that. It uses dander. That dust that chickens leave everywhere and that coats everything, that's how this virus travels. An infected bird is constantly shedding dander and the virus. And to make things extra fun, the virus can survive in the environment for months, even years. So once it's there, it's there. Marek's hasn't been around just since 1907. That's just when old Joseph discovered it. It's been doing its thing since way before that, but wasn't the boogeyman it has turned into today. In the past, there would be some flocks that would have Marek's and some of those birds would get sick and die, but it wasn't out there just taking out chickens the way the internet makes you think it is doing these days. But then something changed. So what happened? Factory farming happened. When you crowd thousands of birds together, which stresses them out, disease just doesn't spread, it thrives. Marek's took full advantage, as did the viruses. From a business standpoint, Marek's disease is kind of a nightmare. Lower egg production, poor growth, higher mortality, increased disease susceptibility, rising management costs. It hits hard in the profit margin. And in factory farming, Marek's can be an absolute disaster. But, and this is really important to understand, a Marek's positive backyard flock is not automatically doomed. A lot of the fear around Marek's comes from how devastating it can be in large commercial settings where thousands of stressed birds are housed together. Backyard flocks are a completely different situation. Now, let's talk about what Marek's actually looks like because this disease does not have one single look. It has several and they can overlap. Classic Marek's paralysis is the one most people recognize, the dramatic one leg forward, one leg back situation. That happens because the virus damages nerves. Marek's can also cause tumors in the skin, muscles, and internal organs. Then there's acute Marek's, which tends to be faster and more aggressive. This form often hits younger birds, usually between 3 and 8 weeks old, and can cause high mortality pretty quickly. And that age window matters because chicks are still figuring out their immune systems. They are basically little immune system interns at that point. If they're exposed during that vulnerable stage, especially if they're unvaccinated, things can go south fast. Then there's ocular Marek's, which affects the eyes. The iris, the colored part of the eye, turns gray and has a very distinct appearance. I'll put a photo link in the show notes because once you see a classic Marek's eye, you tend to recognize it. That said, not all weird eye things are Marek's. We need to stop diagnosing every cloudy eyeball like we graduated from internet vet school. And here's something people don't talk about enough. Marek's doesn't always show up dramatically. Even when birds aren't showing obvious symptoms, Marek's can weaken the immune system. That means chickens become less able to fight off other illnesses, opening the door to secondary infections. This is probably the most common way Marek's shows up. It's sneaky. Sometimes Marek's itself isn't what makes the bird seriously sick. Sometimes it's the respiratory infection, parasite load, or random bacterial issue that a healthy immune system might have handled just fine. Marek's is also ubiquitous. And when I say ubiquitous, I mean everywhere. The wind can blow it onto your property. You can carry it in on your shoes or clothes. It may even hitch a ride home on feed bags from stores selling chicks. It truly is out there. Unless your chicks were hatched and raised inside some kind of sterile biosecure bubble, and I'm guessing that probably is not the case, your birds have probably been exposed and infected. But before everybody panics, exposure and infection do not automatically equal active disease. And by active disease, I mean birds actively getting sick and dying. The majority of Marek's positive birds, they're just out there living their best chicken lives, scratching the ground, eating questionable things, judging you. And this is where the internet is annoying, because somewhere along the way, Marek's became the go-to diagnosis for literally everything. Chicken not walking? Marek's. Cloudy eye? Marek's. Lost a little weight? Obviously Marek's. Neighbor's cousin's chicken sneezed in 2008? Had to have been Marek's. We need to rein that in a little. The sky is not falling. Because if every exposed bird developed active Marek's disease, backyard flocks would be collapsing constantly, and they're not. Some birds are naturally more resistant. They carry the virus, keep it under control, and live perfectly normal lives. Until, potentially, stress tips the balance. And this brings us to one of the most important things when it comes to Marek's, flock management. That means healthy birds, low stress, good nutrition, parasite control, biosecurity. This is our superpower as chicken tenders. These are things we actually control. And now, let's talk vaccines. Online, this conversation can get a little spicy. You've probably heard people say that Marek's vaccine is leaky. And yes, that's true. But before the internet starts throwing chairs, let's talk about what a leaky vaccine actually means. A leaky vaccine still helps prevent severe disease and death, but it does not completely eliminate the virus from the bird, which means vaccinated chickens can still shed Marek's virus into the environment. This is where there's so much panic. But doesn't that make the virus stronger? Vaccinated birds are infecting unvaccinated birds. Okay, technically, there's a kernel of truth there, but we need context because context matters. First of all, Marek's was already becoming more virulent before vaccines even existed. That process started back in the 50s. The first vaccine did not show up until the 70s. So no, vaccines did not suddenly create some supervillain virus. The potential for mutation was already there. And honestly, you could argue that factory farming conditions are a much bigger driver of viral evolution than leaky vaccines alone. Because if you were designing the perfect dream setup for a virus, it would probably look a lot like commercial poultry production. Thousands of birds, high stress, constant exposure, close quarters. That is basically a virus resort and spa. Viruses mutate. That is kind of their whole personality. Their job is to make more virus and infect more hosts. Mutation is one of the ways that many viruses pull that off. Some mutate really fast. Take influenza, for example. Every year, we update the flu vaccine because last year's flu strain has changed enough that we need protection against the newer version. Marek's mutates too, but not as fast. But it does get stronger as it mutates, which is a concern. Could a leaky vaccine contribute to viral changes over time? Possibly, yes. But this is happening reasonably slowly, and vaccines have also saved billions of chickens. No vaccine is perfect, but we need to stop talking about them like they're the villain in this story, at least until we stop raising chickens in ways that practically roll out the welcome mat for viral spread. So, what are your options as a backyard keeper? 1, you can choose not to vaccinate. Some people do this intentionally, often with the goal of breeding more resistant birds over time. And honestly, that is a valid long-term goal. But it comes with trade-offs: higher mortality risk, potentially significant losses, and more virus circulating in the environment. The other option is to vaccinate or purchase vaccinated chicks from commercial hatcheries. Remember that vaccines are not some magical force field around your flock, but they do dramatically reduce the risk of severe disease and death. And there's another benefit people do not always talk about enough. Vaccinated birds do still shed virus, but generally much less than infected unvaccinated birds. Why? Because their immune systems are better at keeping the virus under control. Think of it like this. The vaccinated bird's immune system is much better at spotting those sneaky Marek's viruses and keeping them from throwing a wild house party inside the body. It's like having that nosy neighbor who keeps an eye on your house when you're out of town and your teenagers are home alone. There's not going to be any wild virus parties with Mrs. Kravitz keeping tabs. And less virus means less virus available to spread around to everybody else. With vaccines, here is where backyard chicken keeping gets a little complicated. In commercial poultry settings, the most effective Marek's vaccines are often given in ovo, meaning directly into the egg during incubation. And they require ultra-cold storage. We're talking around negative 196 degrees Fahrenheit, completely impractical for the average backyard chicken keeper. For small breeders or those of us hatching occasionally at home, the vaccine available to backyard keepers is becoming more controversial among some poultry veterinarians and specialists, particularly when it comes to how protective it is. And timing matters. The vaccine can only be given to incubator hatched chicks, ideally within the first 24 hours after hatching, to give the immune system time to respond before exposure. If chicks hatch under a broody hen in the coop, that ship is probably sailed, because the second those chicks hatch, they're very likely already being exposed. And there are a lot of variables involved. The vaccine has to be mixed correctly, stored correctly, kept within temperature guidelines, used within about an hour after mixing, given in the proper amount. And what if you wore the same clothing out with your flock that you are now wearing in your brooder room? You might be exposing those chicks to the virus. So yeah, there's a lot of room for human error here. Do I think using it on incubator hatched chicks will hurt them? No. Do I think it may protect less than some people assume? Possibly, especially when we are talking about newer Marek strains that did not even exist when the vaccine was originally developed. It's not going to have any efficacy on those at all. Now, if you choose not to vaccinate, or if you are raising chicks from hatchery lines and you chose not to get them vaccinated at checkout, you really need to focus on keeping those chicks as healthy and stress-free as possible and keeping them away from other birds until they are older and their immune systems have strengthened. Unfortunately, unvaccinated birds will always be at greater risk of active infection, but we can do what we can to mitigate that risk. Because that vulnerable 3 to 8 week window is when unvaccinated chicks are at the highest risk of sudden decline and death, though it absolutely can happen later too because the virus doesn't always read the user manual. Unfortunately, Marek's has become the ultimate poultry boogeyman. Spend 5 minutes in a chicken Facebook group and suddenly Marek's is apparently responsible for every bad thing that has ever happened to a chicken. But reality is more nuanced. Not all tumors are Marek's. Not all eye issues are Marek's. Not all sudden deaths are Marek's. Paralyzed bird, not always Marek's. Is Marek serious? Absolutely. Can it be devastating? Yes, especially in unvaccinated birds. Is it automatically the catastrophic flock-ending disaster the internet sometimes makes it out to be? No. A lot of the fear comes from how devastating it can be in commercial settings. but commercial environments are very different than backyard flocks. And this is where you get some control back. Biosecurity matters, quarantine matters, clean housing matters, nutrition matters, stress management matters. These are not optional extras. Healthy, stress-free birds handle challenges better, period. And if you lose birds showing symptoms that resemble Marek's, necropsy and testing matter. Because without testing, we don't have a diagnosis, we have a guess. And there are multiple diseases that can look just like Marek's disease. Knowing what you're actually dealing with makes a huge difference in how you move forward, and sometimes in the very hard decisions you may eventually have to make. Here's what I want you to take away from all of this. Marek's is already out there. Your birds have likely been exposed. Some may already be carriers, and many of them are doing absolutely fine. When you understand what is actually happening and stop letting the internet diagnose your flock, you are in a much better position to respond appropriately when illness shows up. Because sometimes it is Marek's, but a whole lot of the time, it's not. Thank you so much for listening, and I truly hope this episode helped clear up some of the confusion and maybe a little of the fear surrounding Marek's disease. I've included links in the show notes if you want to go full chicken nerd and geek out a little more on the science. And as always, remember the golden rule of the bougie coop. Function comes first, but beauty should never be optional. Got questions? Hit me up at thebougiecoop@gmail.com. And don't forget to follow The Bougie Coop on Instagram and TikTok for more behind the scenes and chicken glam shots. Thanks for joining me, and until next time, stay bougie.